Welcome everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you for joining me. This is AC/DC Complete Album Ranking. So in the past, I had done one for Brian Johnson albums, but that was actually before AC/DC put out their new album, Power Up. So I wanted to do a new one here that has all of the AC/DC albums, including Bon Scott era, Brian Johnson, and of course the new one, Power Up, all in it together. And, AC/DC, they started back in 1973, put out their first album 46 years ago in 1975. They've released 16 studio albums internationally, and that's how I'm looking at this. I'm starting with High Voltage, the albums that are international, although I know that they did put out 2 in Australia for a total of 17 albums in Australia. But we're talking international here, so 16 studio albums. 5 studio albums with Bon Scott, and I am going to include the 1 EP they put out, 74 Jailbreak, in this, and 11 albums with Brian Johnson. So we are going to count down 17 releases from AC/DC here. No compilations, no live albums, as I mentioned. Of course, this will include the 1980 album Back in Black, which has sold over 25 million copies alone in the US. And the band, they've actually sold over 200 million albums worldwide. And in my opinion, there are no bad AC/DC albums. There's just ones I like more than the other. So it made this quite difficult. We're going to jump into all that in a bit. But before we do, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video or you know someone that would, please share it, help get the word out on social media. I would also appreciate that. And of course, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this with AC/DC Complete Album Ranking. And kicking things off, we are starting with position number 17 and 74 Jailbreak, which actually came out in 1984. It is a Bon Scott release, a 5-track EP. Features the classic Jailbreak on it, which was recorded in 76, but the other 4 tracks on it were actually recorded in 1974. It's very early, raw sounding, but solid all the way through, in my opinion. I've always enjoyed it. And the second track on it's my favorite, You Ain't Got a Hold on Me. And the EP itself was certified platinum. Coming in at number 16, Blow Up Your Video, 1988, a Brian Johnson release, 10th studio album internationally. At the time, it was actually their best-selling release since 1981's For Those About to Rock. However, the album itself, I think, is very dated sounding. It's a bit too cleanly produced, and the album is mixed, with very even levels all the way through. So there's not really any peaks or valleys within this thing while listening. And I think other than the 2 main singles that came off this, there isn't really much that's memorable on it. So it just kind of fades into the background, in my opinion. Album itself was ultimately certified platinum. Coming in at number 15, Ballbreaker, 1995 release, Brian Johnson album, 12th studio album internationally, and of course follow-up to the 1990 classic album, The Razor's Edge. And the opening track, Hard as a Rock, on here, I think is one of their most classic sounding songs in a very long time. It's a personal favorite. But the other tracks on here kind of seem forced. Like they were trying to write or recreate previous successes in terms of what they were doing. And the lyrical content, in my opinion, was just not up to par. It was kind of silly at points. And for me, the album just doesn't flow very well. In general, I kind of get tired before the end of it, kind of get a little worn out on it. But again, that's just my opinion. It was certified 2 times platinum. Okay, coming in at number 14, Rock or Bust. I don't know if you guys can see the cool change. It's not really appearing on there. Oh, there we go. Okay. Brian Johnson album, 2014, 15th studio album internationally. And it was the first album without founding member and rhythm guitarist Malcolm Young. Personally, I really like this album. I see it as sort of AC/DC's version of a pop album, meaning all the songs are short, to the point, very radio friendly, the way that they sound. But while good, the album itself, nothing really stands out on it, in my opinion. The album all kind of blends together. It's very short as well, and there's no peaks and valleys in it, giving that sort of pop when listening to it. The album itself was certified gold, though. And coming in at number 13, Power Up, 2020 Brian Johnson album, latest album by the band, 16th studio album internationally. Second album without Malcolm Young, but for this one here, what they did is they actually used leftover riffs from Malcolm to create it. And I sort of see this as a sequel to Rock or Bust. Very similar in sound and style and so forth. The songs are, just as, good in my opinion as that album, but they're a little more memorable on this one here. It's got those peaks and valleys that I like on an album, and flows a little bit better. And I think the lead single on it, Shot in the Dark, is one of a new classic, if you will, and hopefully they're going to play it once they start doing live shows. Coming in at number 12, High Voltage, 1976 Bon Scott era album. This one here was the debut release internationally. So this is the one I'm actually starting from here. But of course, second album after TNT in Australia, where they're from. It contains tracks created from both those releases in Australia. So for me, I always sort of felt this album was a little pieced together. There are some really standout songs on here as a whole, but for me it's just not a consistent listen. A little bit too much of the slow blues at certain points on here. Although I will say it is cool to get the first single that they did, Can I Sit Next to You Girl. I'm glad to get a version of that on here, and the album itself was ultimately certified 2 times platinum. Okay, coming in at number 11, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, 1976 Bon Scott era album, second studio album internationally. However, it wasn't released in the US until 1981. There are some really big standout songs on here, like the title track, of course, but there's also a lot of cool filler songs on here that kind of balance it out, so to speak. But the thing is, they repeat the song Problem Child on here, and in the end it feels a bit like a compilation. It's still really good in my opinion, but it just doesn't quite gel the way that I would like an album to gel. The album, though, has sold 6 million copies. Okay, coming in at number 10, For Those About to Rock, 1981 Brian Johnson era album, 7th studio album internationally. One of the best album openers ever with the title track on here. And while the rest of the album is very strong, it never really connected with me. I always kind of felt like the tracks were left over from the Back in Black album. And so in that case, the album itself doesn't have its own identity, in my opinion. I've always just kind of felt it was a continuation from Back in Black. So certified 4 times platinum. Coming in at 9, we have Black Ice, 2008 Brian Johnson era release, 14th studio album internationally. The album itself, in my opinion, has so many classic sounding songs on it, like the album opener, Rock and Roll Train, Big Jack, and my personal favorite, Anything Goes on here. And so the first 7 songs on this thing, I think, are just amazing slabs of rock. Problem is, the rest of the album begins to drag a bit on it. I think, if they had trimmed this thing down a bit, it would have helped with the flow on it, would have been much better. Still, though, it was certified 2 times platinum. Coming in at number 8, Stiff Upper Lip, 2000 Brian Johnson era. And while this one, may not be one of their most classic albums, I think it is one of their most unique sounding albums, seemingly written all around the riff on this one. The album just has such a great groove start to finish on it, and each track on here, in my opinion, stands out. My only complaint here, again, is with the lyrical content on it, some of it being a little bit silly. Case in point, the title track, Stiff Upper Lip, or the song Safe in New York City. Both tremendously good musically, just that lyrical content on it is what pulls it down a little bit in the ranking for me. Certified 1-time platinum. Coming in at number 7, Razor's Edge, 1990 Brian Johnson era album, 11th studio album internationally. Real comeback for the band at the time after so much lackluster sales throughout the 80s. In my opinion, it was album of the year for 1990. No one could touch this band at that time. 3 monster singles from it: Thunderstruck, Money Talks, Are You Ready? Still love those songs. Wish they'd play them more in concert. My only complaint, though, is the flow of the album. At the 5th track, they have a Christmas song called Mistress for Christmas. Great tune, just I don't like being reminded of Christmas in the middle of the year kind of a thing. I think if they had put that one at the end of the album, the flow would have been so much better. And this one really, for me at least, would give Back in Black a run for its money. Anyway, certified 5 times platinum. Coming in at number 6, Let There Be Rock, 1977, a Bon Scott era release. 3rd studio album internationally, and it was the last to feature bassist Mark Evans. In terms of their more blues-based rock albums, this is where the album really works for me. Opening track, Go Down, is simply excellent on it. I just like the album start to finish. It's a solid blues rock-based album and certified double platinum. Okay, coming in at number 5, Powrage, 1978 Bon Scott era release, 4th studio album internationally. First to feature new bassist Cliff Williams on it. More of the songs here are the lesser known hits that they have, but I think in terms of the album itself, it is solid start to finish, all killer, no filler on this thing. There are no throwaway songs. For me, it's the foundation of a lot of killer songs that were to come later on. If you listen to Down Payment Blues, I think it's got one of the best grooves on it, and it would be recycled to great effect on later songs. Just, again, very solid. Certified 1-time platinum. Coming in at number 4, Flick of the Switch, 1983 Brian Johnson era album. Last album to feature drummer Phil Rudd for 11 years. Despite this album not having any real hit singles on it, I think it's just a really solid rock album start to finish. The album opens with one of the best tracks, Rising Power, and then of course you've got the title track on it, which is one of my favorites. And it's just really great the whole way through on this album, including the lyrical content on it and the flow of it. Just all those things connect with me for this. Certified 1-time platinum. Okay, coming in at number 3, Fly on the Wall from 1985, Brian Johnson era album. I know this will be controversial putting this here. First album to feature drummer Simon Wright. And despite the album receiving mixed reviews at the time and generally not being considered a classic, which is why I say this is sort of controversial, it's actually my favorite AC/DC album. Again, this album just rocks start to finish. It's solid all the way through. The title track, Fly on the Wall, then Shake Your Foundation, Sink the Pink are all classic recordings in my opinion. Now the thing is, the album may stand out more for me because the music was used in the Stephen King movie Maximum Overdrive, which I was a huge fan of as a kid, and it was also then of course included on the AC/DC compilation Who Made Who, which you can see behind me there. So just more opportunity for me to hear these songs at the time kind of a thing, which may really have ingrained them in my mind. But I love the album, and it was certified 1-time platinum. Now, despite the last one, meaning Fly on the Wall, being my favorite, I cannot deny the next 2 of these albums, the classicness and the hit-packed nature of these 2. Coming in at number 2, Highway to Hell, 1979 Bon Scott era album, 5th studio album by these guys, and of course last to feature Bon Scott. My opinion, the album has the best production to date on it. Every track is solid. Every track could have been a hit on here. 5 bona fide classics on this one, including the all-time great title track, but also Shot Down in Flames, which I just love. But there's a lot of cool deep cuts on this album that I also like. Get It Hot, Night Prowler's another great one. Album was ultimately certified 7 times platinum. And coming in at number 1, I don't think this is any surprise to anyone, Back in Black, 1980, Brian Johnson era album, 6th studio album internationally, and of course the classic debut with Brian Johnson on it, and tribute to fallen former frontman Bon Scott. This one here just, again, rocks all the way through. It's a very solid album. It's got, again, 5 bona fide classics on here, but every song I've actually heard on the radio, all 10 tracks have been played, making it essentially a greatest hits in my opinion. When I put this thing on, there isn't a single track I don't know kind of a thing. My only complaint is that having heard all those songs, it doesn't leave any deep cuts on it, which ultimately is why it's not considered, my favorite being Fly on the Wall. But of course, these classics that are on here can't be denied. And of course, with over 50 million copies being sold worldwide, how can you argue with that? And there you go. That is the AC/DC complete album ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed it. covering all the international studio album releases, including 1 EP from them, 17 albums we just counted down. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your number one. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye, everyone.